everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last checked in for a recent reads video. I managed to read 6 books over this past week, which I'm pretty happy with. I'm also back to a normal filming schedule this weekend, so hopefully my videos will be a bit less of a mess than they were last week. So yeah, let's jump straight in and talk about the 6 books that I managed to complete over this past week. So the first book that I finished this week was Murder in Mississippi by John Safran. This is a non-fiction true crime. John Safran is an Australian author. He's an Australian radio personality, I think he's mainly known for, but he does do some like documentary type series. I've heard him described as Australia's like version of like Louis Theroux. I don't know that I would go that far as to say that, but they're kind of similar, I guess. And he has always been very fascinated. He has done a lot of documentary series on race and religion. And in making one of his documentary series, he interviewed and kind of did this prank type thing on the leader of kind of a white supremacist group. And it was several years later when that man, that white supremacist man, was murdered by a black teenager. Well, I can't remember how old. He's like either like very late teen or like early 20s individual. And John Safran travels back to Mississippi, where the murder took place, to kind of uncover the truth about what, went on. I didn't love this. I found the writing kind of odd. It's written in very like small, like with a lot of page breaks, lots of like small little chunks. There's a lot of kind of like different kind of tangents almost that we go off on. If you're looking for a true crime book where you get kind of answers about what went on, this isn't the book for you, because we just kind of get a lot of questions, not a whole lot of answers, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, that's life, but it can be a little frustrating to read as well. There was some kind of interesting commentary on race, but it was all kind of felt a little bit surface level to me. In the end, I just didn't really enjoy this that much, and I gave it 2.5 stars. I then read The First Wife by Jill Childs. This is a book that I received a digital copy in exchange for an honest review from NetGalley. This is a mystery thriller. It's basically about a woman who had a childhood friend who she hasn't seen, and I mean like childhood. It's not like they were friends even as teenagers, really. They were friends in more like elementary, middle school. This is set in the United Kingdom, so like primary school, whatever you call grade school, like younger age. And then one of them moved away, and they haven't really seen each other since, but they've kept in contact mainly through email. And it is now years and years later, they're both like adults, and basically one of them, the main character's father, I think it is, has just passed away, and she's kind of trying to get her life together, and she goes to stay with this friend in this kind of isolated house, like on a cove, like on a cliff, like near a cove. And there's this woman that the friend has a daughter, and like she has a husband, but the husband's not there during the week. He works in London, so he's away and only comes in on the weekends. And then she's got this like 3-year-old daughter, so it's mainly just like the friend and the daughter. And then she kind of gets roped into helping care for the child, basically being like the carer for the child. And the child is kind of strange, like, I don't want to say strange, that sounds awful, but like she's regressed. She doesn't talk anymore, and has a lot of nightmares, and like wets the bed, and like there's a lot kind of going on. It seems like kind of sinister with the like child, like, and you're kind of following that story. I had this book didn't really work for me. First off, like right from the get-go, when they meet up again, I was like, this is just so strange to me. So the friend who lives in the Cove house sent an email saying, hey, you should come visit sometime. That's fine. That's perfectly normal. But then it's been like months and months. And then like since that email got sent, it's been several months. And then without contacting the friend again, the main character just turns up. like gets the train down to wherever she is and then calls her from the train station, is like, hey, I'm here. I'm like, who does that? Like, surely you would let her know at least that you were coming, or check that it was okay for you to come stay at that particular time. Like, that was just really odd to me. This also, the title of this book is not a good title, because it kind of leads you into this kind of part of the story, I guess, that doesn't really come up until really far into the book, and then even then isn't really it's kind of a misleading title, which I just don't get why they named the book this. And I think I remember saying when I first hauled this, or I was on TV, I said I'm not sure why this book has this title, because the synopsis doesn't refer to anything about like a first wife. And then all of the kind of ways that the main character kind of discovered the mystery of like what's going on was so incredibly unrealistic. Like, to the point of just you reading and you're just going like, this just would like not happen. It's just so like silly. I'm just trying to see what else. Oh, and then there's also a weird kind of element at the end, like right at the end, that I was just like, I'm not buying this. I ended up giving it 2.75 stars. Maybe on reflection, it should have been more like a 2.5 as well. I don't know. It was very strange. Didn't really like it. I then reread on audio Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. I've mentioned previously that I had decided to do a new reread of the Harry Potter series, but this time on audio, because I've never listened to them on audio. I don't really have too much to say. I obviously love it. I really enjoyed the audiobook, as I did with the first one. And I really, really enjoyed it. And that book also, I realized, would work for middle grade March. That ended up being the second book that I read for middle grade March. And then I read another, I should have said the audiobooks for Harry Potter are narrated by Stephen Fry. I then managed to cram in another audiobook right at the end of March that also counted for middle grade March, and that was The Witches by Roald Dahl. This is technically a reread. I did definitely read The Witches as a child, but I think I only read it like one time, never really read it again. And so I kind of knew the story, like the gist of the story, but didn't remember too many of the details. This is narrated on audio by Miranda Richardson, who is an actress. I enjoyed this a lot. I gave it 4 stars, really, really enjoyable. I loved everything about, like, the witches are not, like, they're actually quite different to the way that, like, a lot of witches appear in, like, childhood stories. I really liked the way that they were depicted. It also, the story kind of went into some like places like in the kind of second half that I wasn't really like, I didn't remember, like hadn't really expected. I thought the story was like quite unique, and like I said, the witches were like just the depiction of them was really cool, and I really did enjoy that, like I said, and I gave it 4 stars. I then read Sticks and Stones by Michael Hybert. This is the 4th book in the Detective Leah Teal series. This is a historical crime fiction. It is set in, I think it's the late 90s. No, the late 80s. 74, yeah, it must be the late 80s, because there's a prologue that's set in 1974 and then it's 15 years later. So yeah, it's the late 80s, so like 89, I guess it would be. So this is the 4th book in the series. I read the first book and enjoyed it. And then the series kind of went steadily downhill. In retrospect, all of the issues that I have with this maybe were present in like the later books, were maybe present in that first book, and I just didn't pick up on it at that time. Because I've had a lot of problems with the later books, and this one was the worst of the bunch, basically. This one is also hugely, significantly longer. All of the other books were in like the 200 to 300 page range. This one is 530 pages long. It is so unnecessarily long. And don't get me wrong, I love a big book, but this just had so much in it that just could like this book could easily 100, even 200 pages shorter. This book could easily have been. Like I said, there's a lot of perspectives in this. Like I've said before, the main like kind of thing with the storyline, like the way that this series is kind of sold, is that it's about a detective in this small town in Alabama, but a lot of the story is told from the perspective of her son. But then you do get also like the perspective of her daughter in this one, and like this is kind of a lot going on. And basically the main crime we're trying to solve in this one is a serial killer who was caught in the 70s, but now a new victim has turned up 15 years later, and it's like, is it a copycat? Is it the same person? You know, that old chestnut. Like I said, really did enjoy so much in this that didn't need to be in there, way too long. The way that the main character basically uncovers what's happened, like the way that she realizes at the end like who it is or whatever, was so just ridiculous. Like, she just this isn't like really a spoiler because I'm not going to say like who it is or anything like that, but she just like comes to a realization and you're like, what? And then this also had one of the main problems I've had with the previous books, that the author just like casts suspicion on other people, which is fine. Like, we need to have multiple suspects, that's fine. But then the like main character will constantly be thinking about these other suspects, or like at least one in particular that I can think of in this book. Oh, but this person was acting suspicious, and it just keeps bringing it up that they were suspicious and they have to be suspicious for a reason, and why is it? And then you never find out why that character was acting suspicious. And that has been the case in like at least 2 of the books, if not all of them probably, that I can think of, that they just like cast suspicion and stuff, and it's just in there as like pure red herring without ever being resolved. That frustrates me so much. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars. I gave it an extra half star because even though I really didn't enjoy this, in case you couldn't tell, the author went somewhere at the end, or like kind of did something at the end that I didn't expect them to do. So I gave them kudos for that. But overall, I just don't think this is well written. Like I said, it's way, 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 way too long. And like I said, I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. And then the final book that I read this past week was The Creeping by Alexandra Sirawi. I actually did a buddy read of this with Chloe from Always Booked. I will leave a link to Chloe's channel down below for you guys to check out in case you're not already subscribed. You should be. This is a YA mystery with kind of thrillery aspects, I guess. I would say more mystery than thriller. We're basically following a main character named Stella, who when she was 6, her and another little girl were basically kidnapped from the other little girl's front yard, and they were missing for several hours, and then Stella turned up, but the other little girl was never found again, and Stella has no memories whatsoever of what happened to her. And it's now like 11 years later, she's now like 17, when she's at a party one night, like at like a bonfire type party, when a little girl's body is found, and it all obviously brings back up everything from the past. I had interesting like journey with this book. The author did a great job of creating a really creepy, eerie mystery. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that this book has some kind of like supernaturally elements, but it's done in that way where it's like, is there supernatural elements or is there not? That type of thing, which I enjoyed. But there was parts of the story like where I would have read like a chapter or 2 and then been like, I'm not really clear exactly what happened in those chapters. And then even when I reread them, it's just like the way that like I got the gist of like the meat of what had happened, like the outcome kind of what those chapters were trying to tell you, but like how they kind of got to that point was just like really unclear. I don't know, I found the writing really unclear. Also, there's a friendship in this. The character's best friend was awful. And I really, really disliked the best friend. And I thought that there was no growth in the way that I wanted there to be. There was just a lot of like forgiveness for a lot of shit behavior. And I did really like the end. If you want a book where everything is told to you and tied off in a neat little bow, then I was going to say this doesn't work for you, but it kind of does. The thing I liked about this was that it gives you answers, but at the same time, there are certain little elements that it's kind of left up to you to decide, well, do you think that like it's like this, or do you think that it's like this? And I really, really enjoyed that about it. In the end, I gave this 3.75 stars. So that's that. Now to touch on what I'm currently reading. So I actually have 2 current reads at the moment because I started the audiobook for The Diviners by Libba Bray, which is a reread for me. I mentioned in a video, in my TBR, I was trying to think, when did I mention this? Excuse me, I got the hiccups. That the main You guys, I mentioned in that video that my library just got in the fourth and final book in this series, which I'm so pumped for because this is one of my favorite series. And so I'm going back and I'm rereading from the start on audio because these are, The Diviners was the first audiobook that I ever read, and it's still my favorite audiobook that I've read to this day. So I'm going back and re-listening to the audiobooks. And so I started The Diviners. I only am like 30% of the way through. I started it on Thursday, but Thursday and Friday for me with work were just like so crazily like busy, and I was having to do a lot of like reading and interpreting like material, so I couldn't like really listen while I was doing that. So I only made it 30% of the way through, and then the audiobook expired, and I was so bummed because these all, particularly I think because the most recent book has just come out, all of the books have a lot of holds on them, and so I placed it back on hold. And then I don't know if it was just for some special reason or I don't know, but I couldn't, when I tried to renew it, it wouldn't let me renew. It said there were too many, like there were people waiting for it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to return and put it back on hold. But then I did that, but then literally like 20 minutes after I did that, I got an alert to say that it was available and I could borrow it, and so I borrowed it. So it's there sitting there again, so I am going to be able to go straight into that and finish that off next week. And then my other current read, like my physical read, which again I mentioned in my TBR, is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I haven't read too much of this yet. This was kind of my backup book that I was kind of dipping into as I was doing my buddy read I was dipping in and out of this, but then I ended up finishing this, so then I picked up this. But I was just reading this like when I had read and completed my section of this, kind of where we decided to read up to for that day, and then I would pick up this. But like I'd said, I got very little reading done on Thursday and Friday this week because work was just crazy. So I am only on page 85 of this. I've read this little bit of this huge book. Obviously with us all being in lockdown, I'd like to say that like, well, we're not in lockdown. I'm like self-isolating, basically, like social distancing. I'd like to say that means I have so much more free time, and I don't mean this in like a over the top way. I mean literally, I had very little social life before this all went down, so it hasn't really meant that much extra time for me because apart from work, I didn't really do that much else. So I will say though that I'm hoping to read a huge chunk of this weekend. Like I want to get to at least page 600. That's my like bare minimum goal, because I really would like to have this done by the time I talk to you guys with my recent reads next week. Is that possible? I don't know, but let's find out. So that's what I'm currently reading, and those are the books that I've read. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts, or to let me know what you guys have been reading. I would like to know. I hope that everyone is still coping with any lockdown or self-isolation or quarantine that anyone is having to do. So I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, physically and mentally. If you want to chat about how everyone's doing, feel free to comment down below about that as well. But please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.